What do these images make you feel? Depending on who you ask, the answer may vary, but most people experience a sense of strange but comfortable airiness from them. Photos which was taken a long time ago with digital cameras from the 2000s, where the people who took these photos probably didn't think much about them at the time. But we, more than a decade later, see them differently. We see a world that has been lost, a world we are unable to go back to. And the only thing we are left with are these photos. A strange familiarity and comfort as we can find our own childhood reflected in these pictures. These houses, playgrounds, strange rooms, even if they're not part of our memories, we can share the same feeling. But then, where do these images come from? I don't mean the edited or recreated versions of these, but the originals. And well, if you read the title, you'll see that's what we're going to find out now. If you're not careful and you no clip out reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the backrooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights and maximum hum buzz. Approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you. Everyone has seen this image at least a couple of times before. The Backrooms was and still is an internet sensation. Games, books, music, hell, even to the point of having an extremely popular YouTube series. And of course, a very successful movie. In any case, everything we've just spoken about sparked from one single post. A post made on 4chan's export, used for paranormal discussions, and sparked a quick interest from the other users. But especially horror space lovers from that era, and would go on to become one of the defining images of liminal spaces. However, I couldn't really find any posts from the original user that posted the image and description, but then where could this image be from? The search for this image isn't a new thing. It went on for about 4 years, with creators like Brugly bringing more attention to the investigation. And eventually, investigators found the original image in 2024 using the Wayback Machine. And as it turned out, it really was a furniture store. More specifically, it was a former furniture store undergoing renovations in Oshkosh, Wisconsin in 2002. The image was posted to a local store website documenting the construction of an RC car raceway before going viral. It's kind of funny to imagine the former owners finding out how popular their old furniture store had become on the internet after watching the Backrooms movie. Although it's kind of peculiar, as their own story with furniture might have been similar to Clark's, given that the store had to be refurbished, but let's move on. This is possibly one of, if not my favorite, liminal space. It's just strangely comforting. The carpet on the floor, the bluish light coming from the kitchen, the eerie center stairs leading to God knows where, or the door with an almost completely obscured interior. Since I've moved houses a lot in my younger years, it very well feels like something I could have truly called my place, my home. And I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way about this exact image, and that was one of the driving factors which led to this investigation, in search of not only the house, but more pictures of its interior, as a lot of other users were also fascinated the same way I was. Some people did argue for a while that the images themselves could have been fabricated or photoshopped. However, after a long and arduous investigation, internet detectives found the exact location, Ashburn, Virginia. But of course, for the owner's discretion, I won't leak the exact location. They found posts on Flickr with the original poster and other images, including the kitchen and what was past those dark stairs. Pretty crazy, and it kinda makes me want to one day rent or buy a house that makes me feel the same way this one has. The early 2000s, what a time. A time where people thought the future would look like something out of a cyberpunk movie, but this aesthetic felt hostile, irregular, and unfamiliar to the average user. Which is why during the mid 2000s, a new type of aesthetic began blowing up, with companies, most famously Microsoft, adopting a glossier aesthetic compared to what we had before. It was basically a transitional period, replacing the dark hardware-focused Y2K futurism of the early 2000s, with something much more glossy, eco-optimistic and human-centric. You guessed it, Fruitica Era. Fruitica Era is possibly my favorite aesthetic of all time, and I will probably make countless videos on it in the future. But today I want to focus on a different aspect of it, more specifically the subsection called Fruitica Aqua. Fruitica Aqua was essentially the more aquatic side of Fruitica Era, with optimistic futuristic worlds almost covered in a layer of welcoming water. Of course, there were others such as Fruitica Echo, which adopted a more environmentalist look to it. Dorfic, which is slightly more minimalist, done with an orange tint. Dark Arrow, Technozen, the list goes on. And I do think these played an important role, more specifically Fruitica Aqua, which seemed to be the one of the core aspects of these water worlds. However, these exploded in popularity with the creation of the pool rooms in the early 2020s. The Backroom's younger brother, but arguably just as cool. To most people, the pool rooms seem much more welcoming than the Backrooms themselves. Those sharp liminal corridors and the fluorescent lights are replaced with round and curvy edges, with white tiles and a water which seems extremely cool and gentle to the skin. I personally don't really like to swim, but this feeling these images make me feel is just different, man. Of course, it still has an aspect of horror to it, but a good chunk of people decided to see it for something else. A comfortable place, almost a home. These images that you see on the screen right now were made by the extremely talented 3D artist called Jared Pike. His 3D blender renders later inspiring the subculture known as pool rooms. But where did these come from? Well, the more attentive of you might have just realized that I said there were 3D blender renders. However, that doesn't mean the pool rooms don't have an origin. During an interview in the Aqua magazine, Pike stated something pretty interesting. He said it was emulating a certain swimming pool, more specifically Roccolo swimming pool in Italy, to practice rendering water and tiles. And with just a simple Google search, you can see how similar these images truly are to his work. He also says, and I quote, "Seeing these places out of context and without people evokes a mix of nostalgia, strange familiarities and eeriness in the viewer. These scenes can be challenging to photograph, so I wanted to explore creating them in 3D. These images seemingly take hours and hours to make, and me and others really appreciate his work, to the point of seeing some of these pools in our own dreams." Pretty cool, huh? Old establishments, old restaurants, old malls, all deserted. They all honestly have something in common. This McDonald's, for example, was formerly located in Yori Dive in Shreveport, Louisiana, and it is of course permanently closed as it shut down in 2022. And you see a sort of pattern with these. All of the establishments that kept that glorious, childlike wonder seemed to dissipate slowly as time went on. The ones that didn't rebrand into a more modern, minimalist aesthetic ended up dying down and then eventually shutting down, which I think adds to a sense of nostalgia we feel. These places can no longer be visited by us. Yes, of course, there were countless ones like these when we were kids, as it is all we knew, but their numbers eventually began dying down. And I think that's what mainly sparked the sense of belonging, the sense of nostalgia. The idea of not being able to return to those places even after many years as an adult. They seem to have disappeared from everywhere except from our own memories, and maybe that's what makes liminal spaces so fascinating. They're not necessarily places we've ever been to, or even places that ever existed. The fragments of things we recognize, separated from the context we're used to seeing them in. A house, a swimming pool, a restaurant, a hallway. Completely ordinary places. Made strange simply because they're empty, unfamiliar, or frozen in time. And maybe that's why we can find both comfort and uneasiness in them. They remind us of places we've known, places we've forgotten, and places we never go, and possibly never will get the chance of experience again at all. Thanks for watching.